That's maybe more on the YA end. The settlers of
they still
Catan
have to.
hexes that America is divided into. Do you have some wheat for trade? Hello, everybody. I'm Cody Troyer.
And I'm Brent Gaisford.
And we are the Hugonauts.
This week, we are here to talk with you about the best dystopian books of all time. Super excited. The list is amazing. We got some hidden gems. We got some classics to talk about. Anyway,
we got some topics. We got topics. Broader
there are
topics.
There's like 3 different topics
there's
around
topics.
Books. There's books in each topic. Okay, it's going to be great.
And next time we are talking about Hugh Howey's.
Yeah, that's his name.
Okay. I was like, who's the aviator guy? Who's the eccentric billionaire? Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes, yes.
I was like, did I just drop?
Howard Hughes, this week, Peeing in Jars by Howard Hughes.
Yes, exactly. Next time we are going to be talking about Hugh Howey's The Silo series or the Wool Omnibus. And stoked to talk about that too with the show on Apple TV. It's very popular right now, very in, and I'm looking forward to it.
For sure. As you know, we love sci-fi that explores possible futures and makes us think. This episode is sponsored by a book series that does exactly that, The Dawn by Ray N. Quealy.
It's an ongoing series of interconnected novellas set in a world much like ours. It shows the dramatic birth of AI from its inception, our present more or less, to self-awareness, and it does that through the eyes of people from all walks of life.
You can find The Dawn in ebook, paperbook, or audio format using the link in the episode description. So, check it out.
All right, Brent, what is even a dystopia? I feel like I was looking at so many lists online, and there's a ton of books in there that I'm like, I'm not really sure that is a dystopia. So let's start with like our, at least, definition, what we think a dystopia is.
Ooh, okay. Good question. Hard question. I feel like a dystopia is a future gone horribly awry, mostly because like society itself is broken, usually because there's some assholes in charge, but it could be something else, but usually it's because there's some assholes in charge. But like, to me, it's like, it's in the future, society's gone horribly wrong, and it's self-inflicted, basically. Like, we have created a system that's deeply, deeply broken. That feels to me like what a dystopia is.
Interesting. I feel like that tracks for me. I would say, to me, it's like either it's often technology based, but it usually comes down to some sort of totalitarian system of government controlling society. And I think that you bring up an interesting nuance, which is that it's self-inflicted. It's like the problem is created and totalitarianism fills the gap in society, and then we end up, or the characters in these books end up living in those worlds. What I don't think it is, which is on a lot of the lists, half the books on a lot of the lists are books like The Road, post-apocalyptic
Sick
stuff,
book,
Station
not
11.
dystopia, not dystopia.
Great novels that I think of more as post-apocalyptic. And then also on those lists, a lot of times there's stuff that I would think of more like climate fiction, like dealing with the climate gone wrong. Maybe some examples of,
like, Ministry for the Future.
Yeah.
That heat wave that kills all those people in India. Super scary, not a dystopia. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's about the world like learning to deal with it and how the world might deal with it. I'm thinking more as like maybe like Paolo Bacigalupi, like Wind Up Girl or The Water Knife, where like especially The Water Knife has a lot of elements of dystopia, like the corporate overlords, but it's more focused on like the climate, the lack of water is the issue.
Yeah, I feel that. That feels like its own thing. And also, interestingly, that's like a super modern genre, the like climate dystopia. Yeah. Like in the last like 20, 30 years here. Yeah.
Yeah. Which 30 years ago, speaking of, probably the best that spans the Venn diagram crossover of all 3, Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler.
Yeah, Parable of the Sower is a dystopia, but it's also post-apocalyptic and it's also climate catastrophe for sure. It's got it all. And it's super good. And it's the journal of a young girl, which is required. Oh, wait, we forgot that. That should be on our list of things. If you want to be a dystopia, you almost have to be a journal. It's super important.
It would be a journal or young adult fiction.
Like a journal written by a young adult, though. Right, even if it's not explicitly like day one, it's like it still very much feels like it.
Okay, so let's lighten it up a little bit with the first section of books, which is the young adult dystopias.
Yeah, young adults love dystopia, and you told me before the episode, do you think there's a particular reason that like teens love dystopia? And I explicitly told you not to tell me because I'm very curious to find out on the show. My reaction will be authentic, everyone. Why? Why do you think that?
I think it's just it's a really easy black and white genre. And obviously there can be a lot more gray areas in some of the more adult books we'll get to, but it's easy to make it like a good versus evil. Rebellion is appealing to youths, as well as just it rankles automatically, right? The idea of
someone controlling your life,
or technology,
taking too much control. I think you're onto something here. It's like super clear, good and evil. And that's like a good making of a good story for like children, young adults. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's easy to shoehorn in like and make it very black and white. And I think that and just like bring out that young rage, right? It's easy to latch onto the characters. And you also get the hero complex easier. You know, the single hero who's doing it all by themselves or taking down the establishment by the will of their own.
People often, well, not often. Sometimes when people say YA, they're using that as I'm just going to say this as a way for me to call this book bad for like categorical reasons. Let me go ahead and throw out there that I like these books a lot. Like I would put The Hunger Games at like the top of this list. I think The Hunger Games, at least the first book, is like an amazing, exceptional book that everyone should read. It's super fun. It's awesome.
Great caveat, because all of these books are great. And like The Hunger Games to begin with, fantastic novel and fantastic setup. And if anything, one of the more kind of breaking my own point here, but the more nuanced of
that's true. She does not solve the system at all.
She doesn't want to be part of it. She's being used by both sides. Katniss Everdeen, and it's why we like
this. Why it's a little more toothsome. It's not just like black and white.
Toothsome is perfect. Yes, fun, great reads with great characters and really strong emotion, and just an interesting premise in general. You know, the future America where Salt Lake City is the capital, and they have the districts that do things.
The thing that The Hunger Games does have that they all have to have is like the super clear. They have like the caste system with like, well, I'm a coal miner.
Oh, did I get one? Did I win one back this week?
Wait, what did I say? Did I say caste?
Yeah.
That's tough. Yeah, you did.
Oh, well, that's fair. That's just a sleep-induced.
We do these at night now, and we have young children, and so we don't sleep anytime. That's our excuse for all errors,
for all of
current and future.
Anyway, okay. We're doing the caste system, yes, it's automatically unjust. It starts you at like, what do you mean they have to do this?
Yeah, and there's only 12 products in the futurist society. There's like Timber Nation and like Coal Nation. Like they only need 12 things in the future. That's fine.
And that's maybe more on the YA end. The settlers of
they
Catan,
still have to
hexes that America is divided into.
Oh my God, that's really good.
Do you have some wheat for trade? That's a good segue though into Red Rising.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Red Rising. Yeah. So I tried to, because I've heard so many good things about this series. I tried, and then I quit like 20% of the way in because I was like, oh my God, we have a caste system and he's upset about the ruling class, whatever. I've heard it gets way better after the first book, but you've actually done this. Please tell us about it.
The beginning, especially of the first novel, is tough because it's just really tough to get on board because it doesn't make any sense, I think. So it makes sense that you didn't get past that part. Humans have migrated throughout the solar system, and I don't want to spoil too much because it takes a second to get to the like open the series up. But essentially, poor Irish workers are mining for the Martians, and they don't know that much about what's going up on the surface. And this is 1,000 or more years in the future. I forget the exact number, but the idea that 1800s Ellis Island Irish immigrants looking for work are exactly the same as they were then on a Mars 1,000 years in the future makes no sense whatsoever. And it's a very like that world supplanted on science fiction that is just silly.
But you actually like it though. Yeah. Take me there. Take me there. Why should I go back?
So I really wanted to dislike the book, but it was the audiobook that I had purchased and I was out of credit. So I kept listening to it a little bit longer. There's something so appealing about the YA. It's like the teenage kid who has, a reason to go against this unjust establishment. And then it's also got the school thing where he's like, okay, I have to go.
The school comes in later. Mm-hmm. I love a good magic school. What's he go to school for?
It's basically like a boot camp for war.
He goes to Ender's Game. Sick, dude.
Yes, exactly. But it's like real medieval warfare in this area of the planet. But they also get help from their proctors who are trying to teach them, and they're divided into houses, and they have to fight and see who becomes the leader.
Is Red Rising just a mashup of every other YA novel?
Exactly. And all those tropes, like as much as I want to hate it, it totally works. And it's riveting and page turning, and I ended up loving it.
Okay,
so,
all right, I'll go back. I'll go back.
Yeah. So it won me. It totally won me over.
Have you read them all? Are you on like book 7 or whatever they're at?
No, I'm not. I just read the first one so far. But I've
heard the second book is much better than the first. Okay, so you're making me feel like I really need to do this.
And I even liked it by the end of the first. It was a fun read, page turn. Okay, other one in that vein, Ready Player One. Obviously, the single hero, teenage poor.
The Ready Player One, I have like a real soft spot for. I read it on a flight once, where was I going? I think I was flying to Argentina. Anyway, So it was far. Yeah, it was cool. And I read it all in one sitting. And normally I sleep on planes, but I couldn't fall asleep because Ready Player One was too fun. It's just so fun. I don't know. I'm like slightly older than I think the target demographic. Like I didn't play Joust in an arcade in the 80s, but like I get why that would be cool. You know what I mean?
And I think that's why also Red Rising was appealing. It's like Ready Player One is another book where you're like roll your eyes constantly, but you're also like, okay, but what is the next?
Yeah, but he found the extra life token. I'm so excited.
Yes. So good. Yeah. And then finally in the YA section, we have The Giver, which is super YA. I mean, I think we read that in like 5th grade English or something. I mean, it's definitely, but I did reread it a couple years ago and I still really enjoyed it. A little, more basic and quick, but an emotional story too. So it's worth a revisit for anybody who's nostalgic about it.
Yeah. What was it like as an adult? This has been on my list for a long time. Like, I remember it like hitting me so hard, but we were really young. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why I say like, if you have a nostalgia for it, you'll probably enjoy it more than if it's a fresh reading. Because it is a very basic conceit, right? The main, is it Jonas? The main character lives in a town basically that is, everybody has a job and they all see in gray, and then he realizes he's different than others. That's another classic YA trope, right? I'm different but better.
I'm the chosen one. Yes, for sure.
Exalted outsider. That's so appealing to teenagers and adults. But the idea that, so anyways, he goes through some trials to become the next giver of the town, which is a position where, I don't want to spoil it, but it's a special position that is really the only like human part of this village as we know humanity. And he slowly becomes, an emotional human being. And and then it just kind of ends. I don't want to say any more about it. But I did enjoy it.
Yeah, he doesn't break the system. It's just we just learn. You slowly learn how the system works throughout the book, and then at the end, it's like, oh wow, that's tough, right?
It's it's a small emotional character story, which I think is what's interesting about it.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Should we move on to some of the more the kind of the big boys?
Yeah, I think we should.
The big boys and the big
let me
girls.
go ahead and start with one that we can say like 4 sentences about, despite the fact that I think it's one of the best books that we're going to talk about at all today.
Right. Spoiler.
Never,
city.
Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which is a dystopian novel about some teenagers that's not YA, and they're at a school, and something is wrong, but you don't know quite what, and I won't tell you because that's kind of the whole point of the book. But it's all told first person, and they don't know what's wrong quite.
It's fascinating. It's a classic.
Worried about it. Yeah. It's.
I mean, we've talked about it before. If you've read Kazuo Ishiguro, you know already that his the best.
Yeah, when you get
he's the best show don't tell writer of all time.
Like when you get to the end and he shows you what the thing is, you're like, oh my God, I should have known the whole time. Like it's been so obvious. It's always been the thing.
Yeah.
But
and it just like his dynamics are just insane, where you are like, if you look at the story afterwards, you're like, huh, what did, there's not that much happen, but you're so invested in the characters, and the way he teases out the mysteries are like the mysteries can end up in his novels can be so mundane, but hit you just like the biggest twist of all, like the Ender's Game twist, like the biggest twist of all time. It still hits you that hard because of how he's managed
the characters are outrageous. He's also just like a crazy talented writer. I love everything. I have a first edition Kazuo Ishiguro on my shelf. It's like
Which
one of my
one?
proudest possessions. It's my favorite one. Actually.
Is it Artist?
Artist of the Floating World. Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
It's his second. It's his second book. So they're less uncommon than his first book. But I don't like his first book as much anyway. Anyway, here we go.
Okay. My favorite's The Buried Giant. Okay, we're getting way off track. Kazuo Ishiguro stands for sure. The both of us. Another fun one that is, well, it's not that fun. It's pretty depressing. That there's also a great movie of, which I think is rare in, great science fiction movies are harder to come by than movies of other types. The Children of Men by P.D. James, and that
I'm so excited to hear about this. Yeah, because I haven't read this, but I loved the movie. Yeah. But I've read P.D. James, and she just writes murder mysteries, I thought. Anyway, please.
Yeah, in general. And the novel is also a lot different than the movie. Not in any in that kind of way where it's a great adaptation. The stuff they took to screen makes sense for screen and makes it work better there. Whereas the stuff in the novel is more interesting. There's a lot more world building and just weird stuff happening that doesn't happen in the movie and is kind of unnecessary to a movie.
Like more people trying to deal with the emotional damage of there being no children.
we should contextualize it first. Children of Men is set in a future Britain, and in the world, the sperm of men no longer work, and so it's been 18
the youngest
years,
person on Earth is 18. There you go.
And just died, and so the world's very depressed.
Oh, he gets
That's
murdered,
like the first
right?
page. Yeah. And so no one really knows what they want anymore. The main character's brother has taken over ruling Britain, essentially as an autocrat.
Oh, that's very different than the movie.
Yeah, but basically because no one else wants to do it. No one cares about living anymore. There's no future to humanity. And I think P.D. James does a great job of just showing the degradation and weirdness and depressing state of affairs that would be if there was no future. There were no children. Yeah. There's no reason to keep doing it.
It's interesting. So what is it? Did she explore it all? Like in the book, in the movie, there was no time for this, but in a book, something I'd thought about is like some people choose not to have kids, right? But they're still in the society that's ongoing. Are there some people in the book who are fine with it, or does it ruin everything for everyone?
Some people are pretty chill about it. The Michael Caine character in the movie is in book a little bit less, but just like chill pothead professor who lives with his wife in the woods and is just kind of riding it out. And there are other characters who are just going on. Obviously, there's a lot of like bacchanalia going on, and then there's some characters who are still trying to seize power, like his brother, because they don't know anything else to do with themselves, right? Like a lot of fascists, they're like, I need to control everything. That's the only thing I know how to try to achieve. And so it's a really interesting world and group of characters and a good story.
Did you like it a lot? You think I should read it? You think I'm missing out?
Yeah, I liked it.
Okay.
It's weird.
All right.
It's weird and good. And it's a great companion to its movie namesake. What's a short one? And I'm gonna just leave this really vague so you don't know what I'm going to. What's a really short one that's good that we also have an audiobook of? That we made ourselves.
Oh, I do know that. Okay, for sure. The Machine Stops by E.M. Forster. We made a full cast audiobook of this. If you haven't listened to it, please do. It's fun.
Yeah, it was a really fun project.
I also think we have like the best recording that exists in the world of The Machine Stops by E.M. Forster. But anyway,
let's not go too far, but it is fun.
I think we do, dude. Anyway, okay. So The Machine Stops. Basically, they get hyper reliant on technology. Everybody lives in like a closet by themselves, and then they have a sweet computer that connects them to everyone else. And they like listen to a lot of podcasts and make podcasts and play games and rely on the machine, the AI, to like feed them. Also, dude, E.M. Forster wrote this in 1909.
I know.
That dude was ahead of it.
It's crazy prescient, and it's about one character who's the son of the other main character who's
just like trying to live his life and get out of the underground crappiness, the machine does not want him to leave. And simultaneously,
it's extremely
good.
Yes, it's incredibly short. It's incredibly prescient, and it's just kind of a good, when like old writing like that. E.M. Forster, another writer who, he wrote A Room with the View. Like he's just like wrote the English novel kind of stuff and then wrote this random sci-fi short or novella. And it's a good read, and it's got a lot of nice language in it and thinking. It's fun.
Yeah, that one's really great.
What about Clockwork Orange, which I haven't read. Should I read Clockwork Orange?
Yeah, Anthony Borges. So Clockwork Orange, similarly to P.D. James. So there's an amazing movie. Like if you haven't seen Clockwork Orange, I truly cannot recommend the movie enough. The book is just as great. So it's definitely a dystopia because the society is deeply broken, but we actually don't learn too much until the end about the system of control. It's broken actually in a different way, where it's like sort of like the social contract is broken, and it's about a group of young men, kind of a gang, who are doing not good things. Like the main character is a bad person that you're not gonna like, and then they do some bad things, and they get caught. And then you maybe realize like it gives you empathy for like a truly awful person in a really interesting way, because the society itself is so broken. Yeah, it's a really interesting book that makes you kind of like I don't know exactly what he wanted you to take away from it, honestly. Like Stanley Kubrick has actually said because like a lot of people who are assholes love Clockwork Orange, basically. And so Stanley Kubrick has said, like, I wish I hadn't made that movie, because so many people who he thinks are like horrible have told him it's their favorite movie. Because like at the end, it's making you empathize with this person who's like not good. But
what is it about that, like the anti-hero, people misunderstanding the anti-hero?
Yeah, he's not a good guy just because he suffers. Yeah, exactly.
It's rampant.
It really is rampant. But I do think the grayness is extremely interesting. Like, I don't think the main character of Clockwork Orange is a good guy, but I do think it's an extremely interesting story, and empathizing with a person who does bad things is not bad. I think that's good for us as a society.
Yeah. If you're media literate enough to realize like what the story's about.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, I love Clockwork Orange. Also a very short book. It's longer than Machine Stops, like our audiobook. Our free audiobook. Check out the episode on Machine Stops. But Clockwork Orange is like a really short book.
Okay.
So yeah, anyway, it's definitely worth reading. Like Cody, I know you would love it. Like it's way up your alley. Way up your alley. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna read it. And I think you may not have read some of the next ones. The next one's kind of a jumble list. So we'll see what I end up throwing up on the screen. But when we were looking at dystopias, when I was looking up dystopias online, I also saw another way of breaking down the types of dystopia other than what we talked about at the beginning, the climate, government, and like corporate dystopias. And it was by author names. It was Kafkaesque dystopia, which interesting. I guess The Trial.
The Castle. And then, dude, I love Kafka. I've read literally every piece of writing that Kafka ever wrote. I fucking love Kafka. Anyway, but he's not sci-fi. That's another kind of dystopia.
Then I just threw up some Kafka on the screen too. I didn't even know I was going to do that. But then number 2 is Huxleyan, after Aldous Huxley, Dystopia. We'll get to that, obviously. Orwellian, also we'll get to that. And then the last one is Philip K. Dickian, Dystopia. And I was like, interesting. I never thought of him as a dystopian author, but really, I mean, A Scanner Darkly is kind of a dystopia. It's a bad
No
future
doubt.
America that's ruled by corporate interest and like government greed. And then you've got
by drug addiction. Yeah.
Yes. And then Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, aka Blade Runner, which is, futuristic society that seems pretty degraded and not fun to be in, where everyone's the main character's desire is to own the best versions of fake animals. And everything is fake. And even the androids aren't allowed sentience. And then also Minority Report, obviously direct dystopia. We have the cogs. We have these minds who tell us when a crime's going to happen so we can arrest you before it happens, which is the exact opposite of presumption of innocence, especially in a system where it's controlled by somebody who has a narrative and who it benefits, and not just like a purely physical force, right? So Philip K. Dick, I guess, is a pretty great dystopian author in his own way. I guess his bend on it is more maybe current and about imagining societies, how certain characters look in a society than some of the other classic ones.
What's interesting, what I think differentiates him from Orwell and Huxley is that the system of control, there sort of is no system of control. Like, it's very unclear why the society is the way that it is. Whereas like Orwell and Huxley like show you very clearly why the society is so broken. In Dick, it's just like sort of, I think he was just sort of an unhappy person. It's just like, but everything's shit because everything's shit.
Right. And I think that's a great way of it kind of breaking down what I was trying to say, which is his stories are more about these characters in this big thing, and you're just seeing the world they live in, rather than the Huxley and the Orwell, which is about the structure and talking about the structure of those governments.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, you've got one, and unfortunately, the audiobook's only available in the original Czech, so I have not read it yet. But
Kallocain? I didn't know that. Yeah. That's why you haven't read Kallocain, by Karen Boyle, who is not Czech. She's Swedish, so maybe it's... but Swedish. Maybe only the Czech version's available. That's even funnier.
Maybe I just picked the wrong... Maybe I just said that wrong,
But okay, so this was a dystopian novel that was written literally during World War II. So she was I think she was gay, actually. But anyway, she was living in Sweden, which like didn't get conquered by the Nazis, but it ended up sort of like getting subsumed into the Nazi empire, basically. And she killed herself before World War II ended. So she like never saw the light after the darkness, but she wrote this book during World War II. It's very dark, but it's very good. And the key conceit is it's set in like a totalitarian empire in the future. It's written as a diary, which is required. But the main character is a scientist who like believes in the state very deeply and thinks the state can do no wrong. And he invents a truth drug. And what gets so interesting about the book is that the thing that works is when they give the truth drug to people and they say what they really think.
Is it
every
called
single
Kallocain?
time? The drug is called Kallocain. Every single time it happens, it's like the best piece of writing I've ever read. There's maybe like 4 or 5 different people who get administered the drug in the book, and the way she put herself in the mindset of someone who's living in a society like this, and what would their like true innermost thoughts, if you could like strip away their guardedness and they're trying to avoid being prosecuted, like it's unreal. And I think the only way she could have written this book is because she was living in Nazi controlled Europe during World War II. And it's just
understands
that. She just understood it in a way that you just can't without having been inside it. And it's like very chilling about like spouses can't trust each other. Like you can't trust the way your mind works when you literally cannot trust anyone. You cannot tell anyone in the world the way you think and the way you feel. It's and then she invents this way to have that show up on the page in a way that feels organic. It's outrageously good. Yeah,
I gotta read it. Unfortunately, yes, it is in Czech, and it's the only version available.
It's in Czech.
Yes,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I don't. It was released in 2023, so I thought it was a new book too. I was like, oh, they just haven't done the English version yet, but I guess it's not. So I'm gonna have to read print for once in my life. Get off my butt, out of my earbuds.
It's not a perfect book, but all the sections of what's happening with the truth drug are they're just perfect. Yeah,
sounds well written.
Yeah, and it's really short. It's like nice. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Kallocain. Another one that's really short is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Probably you've heard of that title.
Yeah, and thank God it's really short because there's some interesting ideas in this book. And overall, somehow, neither Cody or I, like we both were like, okay, we're gonna like try to get back into this, whatever. And after reading, we're both like,
It's tough. It's
weird.
Tough. Okay,
so
if anybody's unfamiliar, the main character works as, quote, a fireman, but in this world, fireman means someone who burns books. And his wife is addicted to a television screen that's on all 4 walls of their apartment or their house, living room, and she spends all day.
AirPods at night.
Yeah. She calls the people in these soap operas her friends. There's less social interaction, less reading, less use of intelligence.
No reading. Yeah.
No reading. It's not even allowed. Sorry. Yes. And in this world, it's kind of Bradbury's just making a simple version of, well, how we live now, I suppose. Listening to stuff while we go to sleep, watching TV, having parasocial relationships. That sounds nothing like the future. So that's why
the one thing that he did that I loved is like the reason that it happened does feel like something we should pay attention to today. Like the reason they decided to stop having any opinions basically is because people were like offended. And it was like, ooh, yeah, we are kind of doing that, aren't we? Where we're like, I don't like that thing. It shouldn't exist. And Ray Bradbury would hate that. That idea.
Filing stuff down until until everyone's appeased by everything, which makes everything just completely mediocre. So there are a lot of interesting ideas. Clearly, we're talking about interesting ideas. The plot is a little bit bonkers, and the book has it's abrupt. But
it's
obviously,
very abrupt. It's short.
Yeah.
If this book were long, I don't think we could even tolerate it, but it's short.
Yeah. And it's definitely like kind of a must read, one way or the other.
Shall we get into the best of the dystopian books?
Yeah, I mean these are the big bigs. The big bigs. Let's start with, let me pick one off the shelf here. Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood.
So
Which,
good.
let's go with the diary thing again. We didn't really talk about it earlier, but Brent has this deal with the dystopia that like they have to be a diary, and there's so many of them which are. Why do you think, you didn't tell me before the episode, so now it's your turn. Why do you think that? Why do you think that's appealing for dystopia?
That's a great question. I think it's because Aldous Huxley's book was so sick. Actually, though, but We was first. Did we talk about We? We sort of
Not
skipped
yet.
over
Not
We
yet.
by. Okay, okay. Oh, it's in
It's
our
coming
list
up.
of the greats.
That's
Okay,
one of the big boys. That's the big
yeah,
boy.
for sure. I think it might be because We
Spoiler.
was so awesome that they wanted to copy it. But I also think it's just a lazy way to make first-person narrative seem like it's artistically interesting. So it's not like it's not the YA version of like I did this, I did that. It's like, ooh, this is a found artifact that someone wrote down. So it's like a framing device that seems interesting, but still gives you first person, and first person is a very powerful way to get you to empathize with someone. So
It
I
also
think that's
might be,
basically why.
yeah, and it also might be easier to write in first person if it's a diary too, because it gives you, it's kind of a prompt of sorts, right? Like you get to start somewhere and it's finite, and you have to control it. Like it's easier to maybe put yourself in the character's space if you limit yourself to, I'm writing in the diary right now, versus okay, what are they thinking about, what should we do next? So maybe there's an
Yep.
element of that too. I think it also feels dystopian, right? The idea of writing in a diary is very personal and secretive, and so it's a great way to
And you get to be
express the feeling.
transgressive, and
Yes.
you get the transgressiveness in some of these books. Like the very act of writing is transgressive, and that feels so, like, to your point about the YA stuff, like even for adult books, it's like, oh, they're not allowed to write down their thoughts and feelings. I'm obviously on their side. Fuck the system.
Yeah, and you get a sense of the world more easily too, because just the act of you reading it yourself, seeing the framing device, makes you feel the oppression. Now you bring up an interesting. We'll just do a quick summary. Handmaid's Tale, for those who haven't read it, about or seen the show, about a woman. It's a diary of a woman who lives in a future America called Gilead that's been taken over by Christo-fascists, I guess you could say, a religious movement that controls through military force. And handmaids are women who, the reason that they came into power is because the birth rate has been in decline in the planet. And so they came to power on the platform of getting the birth rate back up. And how they do that is by taking fertile women and assigning them to political leaders and other people in positions of power to live with the family and get impregnated, so that family can take their child and raise it, which is horrific also. And so it's an interesting story. The diary portion of it is also particularly interesting. I think this, more than any other one of these diary-based novels, like you said, the object, the diary, there's an afterword in Handmaid's Tale, which I actually think is my favorite part of the book, because I've read it 3 times and I only read the afterword this last time. And it's set at a fake academic conference in Europe that's about Gilead, presenting the diary at this academic conference and trying to find its provenance, and whether or not the people at this conference can trust the narrator, can trust June, or in the show named June, but the unnamed narrator. And it's a fascinating look into this idea of the unreliable narrator from fictionalized other characters in an academic setting. And so I really like the
yeah.
stacks and stacks of framing and talking about the unreliable narrator, but in a fictional way. And then you're feeling that she's potentially an unreliable narrator as you go as well. And there's a lot of vagueness. So it's just a fantastic novel. And actually, I forgot, my wife just finished a needlepoint of
Oh my
the
gosh.
phrase that the handmaid writes or finds in the closet of the house. It's in Latin, I think, nolite te bastardes carborundarum, never let the bastards get you down. So we're going to have this pillow in our house pretty soon.
Oh my God, that's a huge needlepoint. That must have
I
taken
know, it
a lot of time.
Yeah, she crushed it.
That's
Anyways,
awesome.
yeah, Handmaid's Tale is it's so good.
It's so good. Yeah, I agree with you. It's my favorite. She did, Margaret Atwood, the writer of The Handmaid's Tale. I don't think we said that yet. Did the way she made the framing device work with that afterword is the most interesting of all the like journal driven dystopias. I totally agree.
All right, other big hitters, perhaps Aldous Huxley.
Brave New World. So good. Okay. So, it's a diary. Okay. All right. So the reason, no, it is, isn't it? Or is it just first person? I think it's a diary, dude.
No,
Is it not?
no, it's not even first person.
What?
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole scene at the
'cause it
beginning where
starts
the
with
guy's explaining the way they clone the different casts.
Wow. My
Okay, it's a future world
shattered.
Future world caste system again, in which
But caste system in such an interesting way.
yes, in which the babies are cloned. No one gives birth naturally. Babies are cloned by the government to fulfill certain roles in society and kept genetically,
They stunt people so they're
Right.
like only capable of doing menial labor, basically.
It's-
and
and
then
then-
put
and
them
the
in that
upper
place
class-
in society.
yes. And then the upper class is controlled by basically apathy, by letting them be comfortable all the time. The drink soma, which makes them always feel good.
It's
they
like
always
ecstasy.
live a life
It's
of
ecstasy.
leisure.
Aldous Huxley invents ecstasy before they invented ecstasy.
Yes,
They
exactly.
they just take sick drugs and listen to raves and have orgies. He really, really, really invented party drugs without ever having seen them. It's a real talent he had. Also, hold on, let me throw out
Do you
there
want to
that
do
this
more
book
drug
is
stuff? Or
really, this book is really funny in a way that I really appreciate. Like this book is very serious, and it's about how bad it can be if you just like are like, oh, my life is fine. I'll just like accept this system that puts me at the top. It's okay. So it's a very serious book, but also it's so funny. Like they go to orgy porgies. That's what they call them. Dude, orgy porgy, Ford and fun, dude. It's hilarious.
Orgy porgy. Yes, and Ford is like the person who started all of this, and I feel like it was Henry Ford, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And Huxley making fun of that too. Yes, it's a fun novel that's also like really insightful and has a lot of great like philosophy talk scenes, much like a lot of these that are just like
and
just
like
characters
about art and like how and like art and beauty and truth in a way that like there's no way that we can summarize those in a way that's like does them any kind of justice, but like they're incredibly well done and really make you think about like, what do I think is beautiful? What does it mean to be beautiful? What does it mean to be?
And truth and beauty versus happiness. It's one of the only, I think when we were talking about like the authors who span a genre type of dystopia, Huxleyan is controlling the masses through making them apathetic. Not through fear and other devices.
They're like hedonistic. They're so hedonistically satisfied that they just like accept the system. Yeah.
Right. And they don't see the injustice other than our main guy. And then the last type of dystopia that we were talking about that is author related would be Orwellian. And that's the opposite. That's a fear controlled society in our next novel, 1984.
Yeah, this is mostly the one that we actually do in our world, unfortunately. So this one is a diary. Feel pretty confident about that. Cody, is this one a diary?
Yes.
I'm sure. Okay, thank God. And you're literally not allowed to write anything down. It's like an extremely harsh totalitarian government. You're not even allowed to think bad thoughts.
Thought crime.
And they're changing the language so that it's not even capable to express dissatisfaction with the system. They're constantly editing out the fact that basically the standard of living is falling, but they just change the records retroactively so that it looks like things are getting better.
It's ultimate, like what we're seeing a lot of now. It's just like lie about something. And then the next step, though, of 1984 is lie about it and then change it so no one can even figure out that it's
you go back
lie.
and change all the old records such that that lie is the only thing that appears. So there's no way to prove even that it's a lie because everything is changed to reflect it. Yeah, it's very dark.
And I think that's why 1984 has had so much staying power, because it's really human. I mean, it's a very solid method of controlling people through fear and misinformation and making people's brains scrambled. If they can't communicate, they can't even think to themselves their own thoughts. That fantastic line, the final commandment of the party was to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. And so when you have all these things happening together and you can't even trust your own senses, then the government has won. And it also has the other fantastic idea, which I guess we probably shouldn't spoil because it's kind of the crux of the twist of the book, how the government stayed in power for so long.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
Yeah. There's a reason 1984 is one of the greats.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and throw out there, like, we're about to talk about, like, the OG to all of these. There is one more great book here, but I actually think that there's 3 books here that, like, everyone should read, which is Handmaid's Tale, 1984, and Brave New World. They all have, like, a really interesting take on this that's very unique and captures, like, a lot of very real lessons about our world. Anyway, 1984 is the one that freaks me out the most, but it almost feels like we're maybe the one that's, like, most close to happening in our world in America is Handmaid's Tale. Anyway, they're all real scary. Let's not do any.
All three, but also Brave New World, right? Like the idea of like just buy stuff and be distracted, and we'll do what we want behind your back, and you won't even think about it because you're just distracted.
You're so busy being entertained and high or whatever. Yeah, for sure. Okay, should we talk about the granddaddy of all of them?
We could talk for a while about which thing is most likely, but that's why they're all 3 of them are so great. They're all a different tack that's like, we're kind of doing a little bit of each of those, and I could see any of them taking flight. The granddaddy of them all is We by Yevgeny Zamyatin, which was written in 1920, I believe, or closely therein.
We is an interesting novel because it's almost like it's got a lot of the pieces of the other things, but just not quite executed as well. In some ways, it's the most sci-fi. Like he's a guy who's working on a spaceship. He's in charge of building a spaceship.
The main character.
Yep. And there's a totalitarian government and a person in charge. People are generally happy. It's hyper organized.
You're assigned your mate who you can sleep with, but
also you can request to sleep with anyone you want, and you'll be allowed to. But you have to
request, though. That's the main thing. You have to like put in a pink slip to like get procreation time.
Yeah.
And you can't have babies. Also, there's that one.
No one can have babies. Yeah, the government has to approve of your babies, basically. You're allowed to have you get to have sex with anyone you want. You're not allowed to have children without the government's approval.
Right. You have to they have to match you.
Yeah, and there's some really interesting stuff that happens. Like the Orwellian part of it is that like they've annihilated the past, except for in this like one very specific place that like our main character starts to learn about. The thing that's most interesting about We is that it's got the kind of the best love story. The main character actually kind of like never gets it together to care about what's happening, but he just falls in love with someone who is like, she's kind of like, you know, the famous
rebel
painting from the French Revolution of like the woman with like the bared breast who's like standing for the French Revolution. Like he falls in love with her, and it's sort of about how the thing that's interesting about this is like, it's kind of like the men kind of don't care and are just lazy, but like there's like hot women who are telling them that things are wrong, and so then they do it. It's like, there's something true in that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's basically got like it's got proto pieces of Handmaid's Tale and 1984 and Brave New World, but all of them are not quite fleshed out as much. Like it's just so much the progenitor of this whole genre, but with all the pieces being sort of like more well explored by future works, I would sort of argue. So
Right.
yeah, it's an interesting one.
Progenitor is a great way to put it, because I mean that also implies what you're saying, which is it brought so many new ideas, and then other people took them and ran with them and improved upon them. But We is still worth a read in of itself. It's a really interesting novel, and even just kind of as a novel, it's like that. There's some parts where you're like, what? And then there's a lot of interesting ideas there too. Also, Evgeny Zamyatin interestingly wrote it in 1920 in Russia, and it started being read because he escaped Russia. I think he knew what he was writing about because of where he lived and the time he lived at. And so that comes across in the page, but it was translated before it was ever
It was first published in English, right?
in Russian. Yeah. And I think French actually, but then
Okay.
quickly English, whatever. And it spread all over the globe, and it took a long time for it to be translated in Russian for, obvious reasons. And so there's a lot of like the author living the story, that comes across as well. So yeah, We, the Progenitor. So that's the one we're talking about last. But there is one more thing I want to do before we wrap this up. Brent, we didn't rank any of these because they're all great. What is your favorite 3, 2, 1?
Okay. This is really hard. I actually know my number 2 and my number 1 for sure, but my number 3 I'm having a lot of trouble with. Anyway, here we go. My number 3, I'm going to go with Never Let Me Go. It's kind of not the biggest of any of these, but like I don't know, it literally made me cry. I couldn't stop reading it. I love Kazuo. Anyway, Kazuo, if you're listening, I love you. Okay.
Well, that's funny because Never Let Me Go is also my number 3.
No
I feel
way.
I feel like you can't like put it higher because it's not, it's not as much
It's
of a
not like a
dystopian
thought
novel
piece.
as the other.
Yeah.
But it's Kazuo. It's such a good novel. I couldn't not put it on the list. That's hilarious.
That's hilarious. Yeah,
okay,
that's
what's your
amazing.
number 2?
Okay, number 2, I'm gonna go with Brave New World.
Okay.
I love the philosophy in it, like the sections where they're talking. There end up being some conversations between our protagonists and the person who runs the world, the dictator, basically. And those conversations are outrageously good and made me think about so much stuff I'd never thought about before. And this idea of control through like satiety, basically, I think is extremely interesting. Satiety, like keeping you fed, keeping you
Sedated.
entertained.
Satiety. That's a great word. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I like that. I agree with you. But my number 2 is 1984.
Ooh.
Yeah, I just love the idea, the end twist that I didn't want to talk about, and the ideas in it, and it just feels like chilling and so real. And it's a great to reread again and again. It's too in touch with human society and human emotion and the way we organize ourselves.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's my number 1, 1984, because
I thought maybe.
it's the closest to the way that our real life totalitarian states do it, like through fear and through controlling your thought and through controlling the narrative. Like it's just the playbook for how to do that, but showing you just a little bit bigger so you can really understand the implications. Like it's just so chilling and terrifying. And like once the system is built, it also shows you like once the system is built, like you can't, it's so hard to break it once it's built. You can't let it get made because once it's in charge.
If there's the one thing about it, which is the thing we can't talk about.
Yeah, for sure. What's your number 1?
My number 1 is The Handmaid's Tale. I've read it a number of times, and it is just so fantastic. Much like putting Katsuo Ishiguro on the list, I think Atwood's writing is just insane in this novel. The show don't tell feels like what the characters should be doing to. It's like done to her. She's show don't telling the whole world in front of her to us, but also as she's finding it. The society is interesting. It also feels realistic and like something that could happen, albeit maybe not in perpetuity, like in 1984. I love the afterword, like I said, that talks about the unreliable narrator. I love unreliable narrators in general. And I just think it's a fantastic, compact book with a lot of great ideas, where not a word is wasted and the prose is just excellent. So that's the one for me.
Well, this was fun. I'm glad we got to like wrap
fun.
this up. We've covered like a lot of these books over the last couple of years here. It's fun to like sort of talk about them all and what makes them great. And yeah, these are good ones. I hope like, I don't know, sci-fi is such an interesting genre. This dystopian subgenre, I feel like, is one where like, even if you don't like sci-fi, I think like everyone should read some dystopian books, because they're like, it's like distilling the sci-fi down to its like barest essence that does apply to everybody in every situation. Of like the cautionary, take today, blow it up a little bit, give you the cautionary tale, give you the humanity of what it's like to live in a world. So yeah, it was just fun.
It was fun. And one day we'll do post-apocalyptic and climate, since those are separate things. Oprah's book club list. I look forward to talking to you about the Silo series next time, Brent.
For sure.
But until then, peace.
Keep reading.
Go vote.
Bye.